Hi, today we're going to be talking about our new Black Bear Scout Saw. Now the Black Bear Scout Saw is a foldable buck saw. So this is a reasonably priced buck saw. They come like this. This is how they'll be shipped to you. They weigh 13 ounces, so they're lighter than most of your Silky saw, well the Silky Big Boy. And they're going to be a little lighter than the Bob Dustrew saw, and right about the same weight as your Sven saw. So kind of in that same era of saw. Now this is going to be kind of an idea on how to set up the saw. So the saw comes like this. You have your windlass. I recommend pulling this out, putting it in your pocket right off the bat. Now that is a part that is replaceable, and all these parts can be built in the woods. It does come with paracord. Comes just about 6.5 feet of paracord, which you can use for other things if you need to, because you don't quite need that much, but it does make it a little easier to use. So you take your saw. Remember, most saws that are like this that fold, the blade opens on, it actually has the spikes on the other side, so as you're opening you can cut yourself. This one does not, so this one is designed to be completely covered, a little bit more like the Bob's buck saw. But you're going to fold it in half, fold it back open. We're going to go ahead and put our support in there. Now this is the saw doesn't have to be open on either side. Either side works the same way. You can even, pull it so you can actually put your hand on either side. Doesn't matter whether you're right or left-handed, which is kind of a nice feature. You're going to open up. This is the knot on here is just a simple bowline knot. You're just going to go ahead and put it in the grooves on both sides. And because we have a loop right there, we're going to be pulling it tight, and as we pull it tight, it will continue to get tighter. Every loop we make from now on, we want to put underneath that, so make sure it's in both grooves. We're going to slide it around, and we're going to pull and cinch it up. So we're just making sure, and a couple little pull through knots or grinding knots works just fine. Doesn't have to be anything special. All we're doing is holding in place. You can even do loop knots. Now you take your windlass out. Now the reason the windlass is not tied, you'll see a lot of them that are tied in. I don't like that because then you can't do half turns. What I mean by that is when I show you here. So we're going to wind this guy up. We're going to wind it, and now I can pick, because I've got it kind of centered in the middle, I don't have to go a full turn to get it. So I can make this saw actually quite tight and right where I want it. Now the way we test and see if it's snug enough, we pull it down and we see if the saw feels loose. If the saw feels loose, try going one more half turn, and that will tighten up the saw. So we can go ahead and go that last turn. I recommend not having the windlass drop below. So basically like that, and you'll feel the saw completely tighten up all the way around. Once the saw is in tight, proper order, then it's ready to be used. Okay? Now the one thing I will tell you is you're going to get a little bit of movement back and forth that actually allows the saw to adjust and absorb some of the impact. The saw itself is made out of poplar, so it's a hard wood. It's very resilient and very stable. They come to you unfinished. We do recommend you finish them if you're going to be using them outdoors in any kind of bad weather. You don't have to finish them though, because they are a wood. It's going to be fine if it gets a little bit wet, but sometimes they will swell a little bit, so a little bit of linseed oil would be a good idea. So once you've got it into this position, and like I said, you've felt, and there's no twisting in the saw. The blade feels really nice, nice and tight here. We want to make sure our windlass is all the way down as far as we can get it. There's no groove or anything that it fits in. Now this can be replaced if you lose it with just a stick in the woods. So kind of a nice idea. Same thing with your center bar. Now the other nice thing that we have on ours is some of the other saws, we had complaints about people using them and having the problem with not being able to take it apart with just a standard Phillips screwdriver. So like the Bob's saw, Bob's buck saw, it has to have two different tools. Some of them have little clips. This one just has one screw that's actually screwed all the way through the wood and is actually threaded into the wood. And so you just back it out, put it back in, and you're set to go. And to change out the blade. So these come with the Bahco dry wood blade. So it's a blade that's designed for dry wood, not green wood. Most of the saws you're going to see out there, your pruning saws, things like that, are going to have the green wood blades on them. These saws come with a hardwood or dry wood, not hardwood blade. And the way this saw works is once you've got it nice and tight, and I mean to the point of where it's fairly snug, they work best on hard, dry, or dry wood. Soft woods, they still work just fine if you're sitting there and building wood for anything else. But we're going to try to use the full stroke of the saw. So another thing you might want to do is get yourself a pair of gloves just to protect yourself from the groove in the back. We want to put our hand over. We teach the scouts to start the saw with their hand all the way through. And we're going to start it. Once we've got it started, we can go ahead, and now that we've got a groove, I can go ahead and bring my hand back over because it shouldn't pop out at this point. We want to get our hand all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to come out here so we don't waste our wood here. And you'll watch how quick these saws really do work. Much better than any of your silky saws and things like that. And the blades cost you anywhere from about $5 to $15, matter on where you get them. So that's a piece of sycamore. That's a fairly hard wood, hard to split. We've tested on oak, pine, everything. Works very, very well. It holds up really good, and as long as you take care of it, they're a great saw. They are something that is on the lighter side, so you'll see a lot of them out there made out of oak and things like that. Those are heavier woods. They tend not to have the springiness that this does, and the stableness that this does. This will actually stay stable, so it won't curve and crack on you and some of the things that some of the other woods out there will. Big fan of poplar. Saying that, like I said, if you have a problem in the woods, you just replace it. Now the saws are real easy to take apart. Same idea there. Your blade, when you do get it, just keep in mind, you're going to see some slight scratching on the blade. I test every single saw before it leaves to make sure that there's no cracks or actually problems are going to happen. So usually I make a couple test cuts before we even leave. Go ahead, stick my windlass in my pocket here. Go ahead, pop the saw apart. And remember what I said before. So you're going to go ahead and pull it apart. Pull the pins out. Drop it back together, and you do have to kind of wiggle it back and forth to get it in there. You can go ahead and set it on there. It's best if you can have a friend hold it for you while you do it. You go ahead and pull your rope back apart. Now this is standard 550 paracord, nothing fancy about it. I'm going to go ahead and slip it around the front here. Put your windlass back in. I usually like to make 2 rounds on the windlass before I start winding the rest of it. So once we've got our crossbar in there, we can go ahead and start winding the rest of the saw up. This will help keep from bending your blade. Now, things that you can build a case for them. Something that's breathable, so in case the saw gets a little wet, it has time to dry out, is a good idea. Also, old tent pole bags will work really well. And we're just going to come around to the last little bit, and we'll just put a clove hitch into it, and I usually double up the clove hitch on the back. And you have it. Now it can actually be slid down the side of a pack. Your windlass stays in there pretty good right there. Go ahead and slide it on the side of your pack. It's 24 inches all the way across. The actual blade cutting depth is right about 7.5 inches, which means you can easily cut a 13-inch log, which is pretty much as big as I'd want to cut out in the woods. And the ability to be able to not have the saw bind up on you if you're having scouts, things like that. Works on hardwood, softwood. Doesn't have a problem there. Folds up very nice, and as I said, about 13 ounces. So this even beats the Silky Big Boy in weight, but